You think you know loneliness? Try sitting in a room full of your own family. My 8-year-old granddaughter, Lily, looked right at me over her chicken tenders, rolled her eyes and said, "You can't sit with us. Mom says you're an old burden." The table erupted. My son Ben laughed the loudest. I stood up and left without a word. That night, he texted, "Mortgage payment still due tomorrow?" I replied, "Figure it out." The next day, the panic began. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments. This is the story of how a grandmother's broken heart became a family's reckoning. My name is Vivian Cole. I'm 70 years old, a retired librarian, and for the last 2 years, I've been my family's personal bailout fund. But that ends today. It started at a noisy, overpriced bistro downtown for my daughter-in-law Chloe's birthday. Chloe, who had never liked my old-fashioned sensibilities, which I think was code for my noticing when they spent my grocery money on designer handbags. I wore my favorite cream-colored blouse and the cameo brooch my Henry gave me. I believed in showing up for family, even when your knees ached and your heart was a fragile thing. My son Ben gave me that sideways hug, the one that doesn't quite connect. "You made it, Mom." "Of course," I said. My grandson Ethan was glued to his phone. Lily was building a fortress out of fries. Normal stuff. Then Chloe's brother arrived, with his terribly polished wife and their perfectly coiffed daughters, talking about ski trips and equestrian camp. I saw the hunger in Chloe's eyes. "Why don't you girls all sit together at that end?" Chloe chirped, pointing to the chairs around me. That's when Lily, my sweet Lily with the strawberry blonde ponytail, looked right through me. "You can't sit with us." A little pause, a perfect mimic of her mother's cadence. "Mom says you're an old burden." The air left my lungs. The table froze for a half second, then erupted in nervous titters. Ben chuckled, shaking his head. "Out of the mouths of babes, huh?" Chloe hid a smirk behind her wine glass. They weren't shocked. They were amused. The truth, served up by an 8-year-old, was finally on the table. I placed my napkin down slowly, the linen suddenly feeling like a shroud. "Well," I said, my voice steady as a stone, "I wouldn't want to be a burden." Ben's smile faded. "Mom, come on, she's just being a kid." "Is she?" I asked, looking directly at Chloe. "Or is she just repeating what she hears at home?" I gathered my purse, the one I'd bought on sale at Kohl's, not the one Chloe carried, and walked out. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and stinging clarity. 2 years of mortgage payments, private school fees, emergency car repairs, the loan for the backyard patio they never thanked me for. All of it had bought me a title, Old Burden. That night, the text buzzed on my nightstand. "No, are you okay?" "No, Lily is sorry." Just, "Mortgage payment still due tomorrow?" Chloe's worried about the late fee. I stared at the blue light in the dark. For 2 years, I jumped at these messages. My fingers hovered. Then I typed 2 words I hadn't said to him since he was 15 and wanted to borrow the car without insurance. "Figure it out." I turned off the phone and slept a deep, dreamless sleep for the first time in years. The next morning was a symphony of panic. 17 missed calls, 32 texts. I made my tea, Earl Grey, the expensive loose-leaf kind, and read every one while my cat, Mr. Paws, purred in my lap. "Ben, Mom, call me back, it's urgent." Chloe, "Vivian, there's been a huge misunderstanding. Lily feels awful." Lily, clearly typed by Chloe. "Sorry, Grandma, I love you." The mortgage was due at 3 p.m. Without my $2,500, they were $1,200 short. I knew because I'd quietly requested online statements months ago, my librarian's curiosity turning to suspicion. At 9:07 a.m., his truck screeched into my driveway. Ben stormed up the walk, that same stormy expression he'd had since he was a teenager, expecting me to clean up his mess. "Mom, what is this? The payment didn't go through." "No," I agreed calmly, not moving from the doorway. "It didn't." He brushed past me. "You need to call the bank right now. This isn't funny." "I'm not laughing, Benjamin. I transferred exactly $48,000 over the last 2 years. That's funny money to you?" His face flushed. "The business has had a slow patch, you know that." "I know a lot of things," I said, settling into Henry's worn armchair. I know that people who see others as burdens don't deserve endless generosity. I know that public humiliation has a price. That price is $2,500 a month. You're overreacting. It was a joke. The Bank of Vivian, I said slowly, is permanently closed. The color drained from his face. The reality, the math, finally hit him. We'll lose the house. Then you should have valued the person paying for it, I said, standing. I have book club at 11. You'll need to sort this out yourself. The bargaining began. The threats, the guilt. It was like watching a play I'd seen too many times. Only this time, I'd left the audience. That afternoon, I called my financial advisor, Arthur. Arthur, I said, I need to redirect some automated distributions. Permanently. The foreclosure notice came 32 days later. A grainy photo from Ethan appeared on my phone. Grandma ruining everything as usual. I was in my rose garden, tending to the peace climbers Henry had planted. I didn't respond. What followed was what I called the campaign. Phase 1. Guilt. Chloe arrived, tears like morning dew, promising change. I served her tea and silence. Phase 2. Recruitment. My neighbor, sweet Doris, hinted about family forgiveness. I told her forgiveness and financing were two different things. Phase 3. Institutional manipulation. Lily's teacher called, concerned she was telling friends her mean grandma was making them homeless. I politely explained financial enablement versus responsibility. Then, the nuclear option. A call from a lawyer. Mrs. Cole, I represent your son, Benjamin Cole. He is petitioning for conservatorship, citing concerns about your erratic financial decisions and cognitive decline. The audacity stole my breath. My own son, because I'd stopped writing checks, was trying to have me declared incompetent. To steal the very independence Henry had worked so hard to secure for me. I called a lawyer of my own, Eleanor Vance, whose voice was like polished steel. This is classic financial elder abuse, Vivian. We don't just defend, we go on the offensive. The hearing was in a cold, bright room. I wore my best suit. Ben arrived with his baby-faced lawyer, looking smug. Judge Henderson was a woman with eyes that missed nothing. Ben's lawyer painted a picture of a confused widow making irrational, hostile decisions. A dramatic departure from a lifetime of generosity, he called it. Then Eleanor stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Cole didn't lose her judgment. She found it. She presented my medical records, perfectly sound. My financials, meticulous. Then she played a recording, from after Ben threatened the conservatorship. His voice cold. Just sign over the management of the accounts, Mom. It's for your own good. We can't have you cutting us off on a whim. Another recording, Chloe on speakerphone to a friend. Once we get control of the old bat's money, we can finally get the coastal vacation house. She's too frail to know what's good for her. The courtroom went still. Judge Henderson's mouth was a thin line. Mr. Cole, she said, do you have an explanation? He spluttered about privacy, context. The context, the judge interrupted, is attempting to legally plunder your mother because she stopped allowing you to do so informally. The gavel cracked. Petition denied, and this court is referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of elder financial abuse. Outside, Ben stared at me, not with love or even anger, but with the pure, naked hatred of a predator denied its meal. I thought it was over. I was wrong. 3 weeks later, a moving truck. Doris called, whispering, Vivian, they're loading up Ben's house. My phone rang. Mom, we're moving to Colorado. Fresh start. Chloe's cousin has work for me. His voice was too light, too airy. The kids, it's chaotic. We thought they could stay with you. Just until we get settled. They're so comfortable with you. The sheer breathtaking entitlement. They were abandoning their children and handing me the responsibility like a grocery list. No, Benjamin. What? Mom, they're your grandchildren. And you are their parents, I said, each word an ice cube. You do not get to dump them on my doorstep because your life is inconvenient. Take them with you, or don't go. You'd make your grandchildren homeless? You are making that choice, I said. Not me. I watched from the window as they packed. Ethan and Lily sat on the curb, little suitcases beside them, looking lost. My heart shattered, but my resolve hardened. Enabling this would be the cruelest thing of all. With a heavy heart, I made the call I never imagined making. Child Protective Services? I need to report imminent child abandonment. The social workers arrived as the moving truck was sealed. There were papers, heated discussions on the lawn. Ben and Chloe could leave, but the children would go into emergency foster care, a wonderful, experienced family named the Garcias, unless stable families stepped up. The social worker, Anna, came to my door. They suggested you might take them, Mrs. Cole. They were mistaken, I said, my voice thick. I cannot reward their abandonment by cleaning it up. I watched the Garcias' minivan drive away with my grandchildren. That night, I cried for the first time, not for Ben, but for Ethan and Lily, pawns in their parents' selfish game. But the story wasn't finished. 2 months later, Anna visited with an update. Benjamin and Chloe were arrested in Nevada, she said gently. The car was full of stolen high-end building materials. The business slow patch was actually a fencing operation. Your mortgage payments were likely working capital. Then came the knockout blow. During the investigation, Benjamin claimed you were involved, that you knew about the operation and helped launder the money through the gifts. My own son, trying to drag me down with him. The federal trial was a nightmare I walked through wide awake. I testified. Then, Ethan, now 14, asked to speak. He told the courtroom about the warehouse trips with his dad, the late-night calls about inventory. Chloe had shushed him, called it adult business. His courage, his quiet truth, was the final nail. Ben was convicted. Chloe got a lesser sentence. They'd be gone for a long, long time. In the aftermath, Anna sat with me again. The parental rights have been terminated, Vivian. The children are wards of the state. We prefer family placement. Would you consider it? Now, knowing everything? I looked at photos Anna showed me of the children with the Garcias. They were smiling, they were safe, but they weren't home. Yes, I heard myself say, I want to bring them home. The custody hearing was different. Judge Henderson remembered me. My petition was stacked with plans, counseling, schooling, a new will establishing trusts. The Garcias testified to my devotion. When Lily, now 9, was asked where she wanted to live, she simply walked over and put her hand in mine. With my grandma Vivian. She says no, but she means it. She doesn't say one thing and do another. The gavel fell. My house, once too quiet, was filled with life again. Homework at the kitchen table. Piano practice. Teenage angst over haircuts. It was exhausting, wonderful, and real. Tonight I sit in my garden. Ethan is inside, helping Lily with a science project. The peace roses are blooming wildly, a fragrant, tangled testament to resilience. The final twist? The federal restitution. Ben had hidden money. As a victim of his identity theft, he'd used my good name to open accounts. I was entitled to a share. I took half for the children's future. The rest went to his other victims. The old Vivian was a vault, opened with the right combination of guilt and obligation. The new Vivian is a library, selective about her resources, protective of her peace, and open only to those who treat her story with respect. My family wasn't destroyed that day at the bistro. It was revealed. And from those broken pieces, I built something true. Sometimes the most loving word is no, and sometimes the family you're given isn't the family you choose. But you can choose to build a new one, right in your own backyard, among the roses. The first 6 months of full custody were a beautiful, exhausting whirlwind. My quiet, orderly life was replaced by a symphony of backpacks, permission slips, and the mysterious, ever-present smell of teen boy, Ethan, and glitter glue, Lily. We established rituals, Taco Tuesdays, Sunday morning pancakes shaped like animals, my specialty, and garden time every evening before dusk, where we'd just sit among the roses and talk about nothing and everything. Therapy helped, for all of us. Dr. Evans, a kind woman with a gentle voice, helped the children untangle the knots of abandonment and fear. She helped me shed the last vestiges of guilt. "You didn't break this, Vivian," she'd say. "You're providing the safety for it to heal." Ethan, at 15, was a fortress slowly lowering its drawbridge. The anger he'd carried, mostly directed at me initially, melted into a gruff, protective loyalty. He took over mowing the lawn without being asked. He'd subtly position himself between Lily and any unfamiliar noise. One night I found him at the kitchen table, my old ledger book open. "I'm trying to understand," he said, not looking up. "How much he took from you?" "From us," I sat beside him. "Don't measure your life in what was stolen. Ethan, measure it in what you're building." Lily's healing was more vocal. She had nightmares where the truck came back. We devised a system, a small bell by her bed she could ring, and I'd come, no matter the hour. We'd sit in the rocking chair, and I'd tell stories about her grandfather. Henry, not the saintly figure of eulogies, but the man who once tried to fix a toaster and fuse the lights for the whole block. She'd giggle, her fear forgotten. The word burden was never spoken, but one day she brought me a drawing. A giant, smiling woman with a cameo brooch, sheltering 2 small children under her skirt. At the top, she'd written, "My Grandshield." The Bank of Vivian was closed, but the Treasury of Family was open for business, trading in time, patience, and homemade cookies. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, the postmark like a cold finger on the back of my neck. Stonehaven Penitentiary. It was from Ben. "Mom, I know you don't want to hear from me. I'm not asking for anything. They won't let me have money in here anyway. I just have a lot of time to think. The therapist here makes us write these accountability letters. I'm supposed to list the people I've harmed. Your name is at the top of a very long list. I told myself you were cold, withholding, that you loved your money more than me. It was easier than admitting I was a thief who stole from his own mother. I used Lily that night. I knew Chloe had been saying those things. I thought if you felt small, you'd be more likely to keep paying. It was the cruelest thing I've ever done. I don't expect a reply. I don't deserve one. I just needed to say it, for the record. Benjamin, I read it 3 times. There was no plea, no request, just a stark, simple statement. The part about using Lily that landed like a physical blow. It wasn't just a cruel joke, it was a calculated tactic. I showed it to Eleanor Vance, my lawyer. "Is this a legal trick?" I asked. She read it carefully. "No, this is the kind of thing mandated in rehabilitation programs. It's admissible in court, actually, an admission of manipulation. He's not asking for anything, Vivian. That's what makes it possibly genuine." I didn't reply, but I didn't throw it away. I placed it in Henry's old lockbox atop our marriage certificate and the children's birth records. A piece of the tragedy, filed for history. Ethan, now a driven high school junior, came home buzzing with excitement. "Grandma, the STEM Achievers Scholarship. Full ride to state plus internships. My guidance counselor nominated me." My heart swelled. "That's incredible, sweetheart. The application needs a family financial portfolio and a character reference from a guardian, and it asks about parental background." His excitement dimmed. "Do I have to mention him?" We sat at the table, the application between us like a minefield. "You tell the truth," I said firmly. "You state that you are in the legal custody of your grandmother due to parental incarceration. You emphasize your resilience, your grades, your work with the robotics club. You turn their story into your foundation, not your ceiling. We worked on it for nights." He wrote, My father's poor choices taught me the value of integrity. My grandmother's unwavering support showed me the strength of real family. I cried when I read it. But the shadow of Ben's past wasn't finished. A week later, a man in a worn leather jacket appeared at my door. "Mrs. Cole, I'm Mike Rourke. Ben did some work for me. He never finished the job, and he took a deposit, $15,000. I lost my business because of it. He wasn't threatening. He was defeated. I heard he got locked up. I heard you got some of his money back. I'm just asking for my kids." This was the human cost I hadn't seen. I verified his story with a quick, discreet call to the detective on Ben's case. It checked out. I didn't owe this man anything, but the Treasury of Family had a principle: make amends where you can. I wrote him a check from the restitution money, a fraction of what he'd lost, but everything I could spare. "This isn't from him," I said. "This is from me, for your kids." The gratitude in his eyes was a heavier weight than any guilt. Chloe was released on early parole after 2 years. Her first act was not to contact the children, but to send me a registered letter from her sister's address. It was a legal-looking document, petitioning for reinstatement of limited visitation rights, citing her rehabilitation and a mother's irreparable bond. My blood ran cold. Eleanor Vance went into battle mode. She has no leg to stand on. Terminated rights are permanent. But she can file, and she can force the children through evaluations. It's a harassment tactic. Why now? I asked, feeling the old anxiety creep in. Often it's when they want something. A fresh start, a clean narrative. Having her children back in the picture looks good for a parole officer. We had to tell Ethan and Lily. Lily crawled into my lap, her 9-year-old body tense. I don't want to see her. Ethan's jaw was set. She doesn't get to come back. The hearing was a brief, brutal affair. Chloe appeared thinner, harder. She spoke of therapy, of finding God. Her lawyer argued for supervised reintroduction. Then, the judge asked the court-appointed child advocate for a report. The advocate summarized Dr. Evans's statements: the children are thriving in a stable, loving home. Reintroduction of the birth mother, who was a co-conspirator in their abandonment and the trauma that preceded it, would be profoundly detrimental to their emotional well-being. The judge denied the petition. As we left, Chloe caught my eye in the hallway. The tears were gone, replaced by a pure, sharp hatred. "You've turned them against me. You think you've won. This isn't over." It wasn't the rant of a grieving mother. It was a promise. The promise materialized a month later, not as a direct attack, but as a poison seep. Lily came home from school, quiet. "Grandma, is it true you sent our mom to jail because you wanted her money?" "Where did you hear that, sweetheart?" "A lady at the park yesterday. She was talking to my friend's mom. She said you were a rich, bitter old woman who destroyed your son's family." Chloe, or someone she'd enlisted. The campaign had moved to the shadows, to the playground whispers. Then, a Yelp review appeared for the library where I volunteered. "Vivian Cole is a nasty piece of work. She stole her own grandchildren. Ask her about her son in prison." It was taken down, but the sting remained. Then, the fire. Not at my house, thank God. At the edge of my property, in the old tool shed where Henry kept his gardening supplies. The fire department said it was likely kids, faulty wiring. But they found an empty gas can tossed in the bushes, no fingerprints. The police were cautious. "No direct evidence, Mrs. Cole, but given the context, we'll increase patrols." That night, I was terrified. Not for myself, but for Ethan and Lily. My fortress felt porous. Eleanor urged a restraining order, but we needed more than whispers. I did the only thing I could think of. I installed a security system with cameras, and I sat the children down. "Someone is trying to scare us," I said, holding their hands. "They want us to feel unsafe in our own home. What do we do when bullies try to scare us?" Ethan straightened up. "We stand together. We don't run." Lily, her eyes wide but fierce, nodded. "Like a grand shield." We were a unit under siege, but a unit nonetheless. The break came from an unexpected source: Mike Rourke, the man whose business Ben had destroyed. He called me, his voice urgent. "Mrs. Cole, I was at a job site today. I overheard a woman, matched the photo you showed me of Chloe, talking to a guy about a final push. She was paying him cash, talking about making the old lady seem unfit. Something about a prescription drug scam. I thought you should know. It was the thread we needed." I gave everything to Eleanor and Detective Rodriguez. They set a trap. They monitored Chloe's communications, a parole violation, and caught the guy, a small-time con artist, trying to bribe a pharmacy tech to fabricate a record of me having a dangerous opioid prescription. The arrest was swift. Parole violation, conspiracy, attempted fraud. Chloe was going back inside, this time with a longer sentence and a restraining order that stretched a mile around our home, school, and my beloved library. In the profound quiet that followed the storm, I realized something. The war was over. The last weapon had been tried and had failed. The children were safe, truly safe. I decided to write my will. Not the simple one I'd had before, but a testament. Eleanor helped me draft it. The bulk of the estate, the house, the remaining restitution money would go to Ethan and Lily in protected trusts, with Arthur as the executor. But I added a final symbolic clause. A sum of $10,000 is to be placed in a trust for Benjamin Cole, payable only upon his release. This is not an inheritance. It is a seed. Whether he chooses to plant it or let it wither is his own accountability to finally tend. I also left a small bequest to the library to fund a children's reading garden, and one to the Garcia family, who had been our first port in a storm. When I signed it, I felt a chapter close, not with a bang or a whimper, but with the firm, definitive stroke of a pen. I was not just reacting anymore. I was building a legacy. That evening, in the garden, Lily pointed to the peace rose, blooming spectacularly on the rebuilt trellis near where the shed had burned. "It's even prettier now, Grandma." Ethan put his arm around my shoulders. "It's resilient, like you." We sat there, three resilient things, growing in the ashes, stronger for the fire. The story wasn't a nightmare anymore. It was simply our history, and our future was unwritten, smelling of roses and possibility. A full year of peace. It felt unfamiliar at first, like a new shoe that hadn't yet molded to my foot. We stopped jumping at doorbells. The security cameras became mundane, just another part of the house. The children's laughter lost its guarded edge and became free, explosive. Ethan's focus became monumental. He won the STEM Achievers Scholarship. The acceptance letter from State University arrived, and we whooped so loudly Mr. Paws fled under the sofa. It was more than an academic victory. It was a declaration. His future was his own, built by his own hands and formidable mind. With the pressure valve released, Lily's true personality, a vibrant, theatrical soul, blossomed. She auditioned for the school play, The Secret Garden, and won the lead. I sat in the front row on opening night, watching this once terrified little girl command the stage with a voice clear as a bell, and wept tears that held no sorrow, only awe. One Saturday, Ethan was digging in the garden, helping me expand the rose bed. His shovel hit something solid. Not a rock, but a metal box, corroded and buried deep near the old oak. Henry's time capsule, buried the summer before he got sick. We'd forgotten all about it. We opened it on the kitchen table. Inside, wrapped in wax paper, a photograph of a young Henry and me with baby Ben at this very house. A 1965 silver dollar. A handwritten letter from Henry. "For my Maggie," yes, I'll call you that even in writing. "If you're reading this, the roses are probably taller than the fence, and Ben is likely a man. I hope he's a good one. I hope he remembers to water your garden when you're away. I'm burying this today feeling like the luckiest man alive. Remember, the roots are what matter. Tend them and the plant can weather any storm. All my love forever. Henry." He'd called me Maggie, his private nickname for me. I hadn't heard it in a decade. Lily touched the photo gently. Grandpa Henry loved you so much. Ethan. Uncharacteristically emotional. Read the line about roots twice. It felt like a message, a blessing from the past, validating the path of the present. We were tending our roots. The past, however, has a way of sending invoices. An unmarked envelope arrived, with a return address for a law firm in the state where Ben was imprisoned. It contained no letter, just a single, stark document, a notice of debtor's exam in a civil suit. A company called Granite Peak Contracting was suing Benjamin Cole for $85,000 in fraud and damages. The notice stated that, as part of discovery, they were entitled to examine any parties potentially holding assets on the defendant's behalf, including family members. Eleanor Vance snorted when I showed it to her. It's a fishing expedition, a scare tactic. They've heard he had money that went to family. They're trying to see if any landed with you. You have no legal obligation. The restitution you received was for your damages as an identity theft victim. It's legally untouchable by his creditors. But do I have to go to this exam? I asked, the old flutter of anxiety in my chest. We'll go, Eleanor said, a glint in her eye. And we'll shut it down. They're predators looking for easy prey. They assume a 72-year-old woman will be frightened into a settlement. The meeting was in a sterile conference room. A lawyer named Driscoll, all sharp suit and sharper smile, represented Granite Peak. He began with smarmy courtesy, which quickly evaporated when Eleanor presented the court orders. The judgment granting me restitution as a victim, the airtight trusts for the children, the property titles in my name alone. My client is a victim of Mr. Cole's crimes, not a repository for his assets, Eleanor stated coldly. This examination is concluded. Driscoll tried to bluster. We have reason to believe funds were commingled. You have no reason and you have no evidence, Eleanor cut him off, gathering her papers. File a motion if you disagree. We look forward to seeing you in front of Judge Henderson again. She's familiar with this family's history of attempted exploitation. The mention of the judge's name was a magic spell. Driscoll deflated. We walked out, the silence behind us loud with his defeat. On the drive home, Eleanor said, They won't be back. You're not an easy mark, Vivian. Word gets around in those circles. I realized I was smiling. The Bank of Vivian was not only closed, it was now a fortress, its walls known and respected. The seasons turned twice more. Ethan left for university, his room achingly quiet but full of pride. Lily entered middle school, all braces and bold opinions. My life settled into a new sweet rhythm of weekly phone calls with Ethan, school events with Lily, book club, and my now legendary rose garden. Then a formal letter from the Department of Corrections. Benjamin Cole, inmate on A78432, was being considered for parole. As the victim of his identity theft and a custodial guardian of his minor child, I was entitled to submit a victim impact statement and to speak at the hearing. The children were adults in the eyes of the law now. Ethan at university, Lily at 13. I called a family council in the garden. They want to know if he should be released, I said. They want to hear from us. Lily spoke first. Is he still dangerous? Not in a way that would get him sent back to us, I said. But dangerous to himself? To others if he falls back into old patterns? That's what the board decides. Ethan's voice was calm, mature over the speakerphone. What does your gut say, Grandma? I looked at the peace rose, now thick and towering. My gut says people can change, but only if they do the work themselves. We cannot do it for them. We cannot parole him in our hearts until he proves he's paroled himself from his own choices. I decided to go, not for him, but for us, to close our own loop. Eleanor came with me. The parole hearing room was beige and tense. Ben was led in, dressed in prison khakis. He was 46 now, graying, thinner. He looked ordinary. The terrifying, larger-than-life figure of my nightmares had shrunk to a man in a cheap uniform. He didn't look at me. The board read the statements. They asked Ben questions about his job training. He'd become a certified electrician's apprentice. His therapy, his plans. His answers were monosyllabic, rehearsed, but not defiant. Then the chairwoman turned to me. Mrs. Cole, you've submitted a powerful statement. Would you like to speak? I stood. My knees didn't shake. Members of the board, the man in this room stole my name, my money, and tried to steal my freedom. He manipulated his own children and abandoned them. The damage is a permanent line on the ledger of our lives. I took a breath. But your task isn't to punish him for what he did to me. That debt he can never repay to me. Your task is to decide if he's a danger to society. His certification, his clean conduct record. They suggest he might not be. My request is simple. If you release him, make that release contingent on him continuing to build that new life away from us. A restraining order protects my minor granddaughter. I would ask that his parole terms formally acknowledge that boundary. We have built a good life from the wreckage he created. We deserve to live in it undisturbed. I sat down. Ben finally looked at me. There was no anger, no plea, just a profound, exhausted recognition. The board deliberated for an hour. They granted parole with stringent conditions, continued therapy, mandatory employment, and a specific geographic exclusion from our county. The seat I'd left in my will, the vocational trust, was still there, waiting. The choice to grow it or not was now. On the drive home, Eleanor broke the silence. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen you do. You didn't ask for vengeance. You asked for peace. That's a different kind of power. That night, I sat in the garden with Lily. The sunset painted the sky in watercolor hues. Is it over, Grandma? She asked, leaning her head on my shoulder. His chapter in our daily lives is over, sweetheart, I said, putting my arm around her. But our story keeps going. See that bud there? I pointed to a new, tight rosebud on the climber. That's tomorrow's story, and we'll be here to watch it open. The air was sweet with the scent of roses and cut grass. The roots were deep. The shield was strong. And the woman sitting in the garden, the grandmother, the survivor, was finally, completely at home. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own stories of resilience below. Your voice matters. Now entirely, and finally his.